What's up, everybody? And happy Wednesday evening. It's me, your boy, the OU flag guy. For those of you in the Oklahoma City area right now, I think I am not the only one who's very happy to finally have received like some cooler temperatures and some rain versus the just boiling and cooking temperatures we've had of like 110 to 115. I know my air conditioner is very happy for the little bit of relief we have, even though we have some like expected temperatures like next week in the hundreds again. But again, I know what y'all are here for. I know you're here for some football. Just a quick housekeeping awareness thing to start. I am aware that the audio syncing issues I'm having with some of my videos locally, I am recording and it shows fine before it's uploaded for it. I'm just gonna have to work and tinker on my end to correct this issue, as I was unaware that YouTube took their entire video editing software down a while back, so I can't just overlay the audio and mute the video at this point. So, like I said, I'll just have to fix it another way and find another more efficient program. More than open to suggestions for anybody who has like good audio and video software you would recommend. But let's jump right into the football. Today, or yesterday, I was going to release a video about the Reddit's top programs in the past 40 years because we're starting to come up to like the top 10, and I have a prediction of where OU is going to land. However, due to the coaches poll coming out on Monday, I'm going to actually kick that to tomorrow, kind of adjust the schedule and everything as well. But talking about the coaches poll on Monday, the coaches poll, which again, I remind you, in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter in the end, as the coaches poll is an archaic poll, which the coaches don't really even watch the games at this point. It's just based on historical data and last year's success and some of the standard talent that remained versus incoming talent as well. Um, Again, though, it was released and OU arrived at number 19. A breakdown of the list included of the rest of the rankings included number one, Georgia, number two, Michigan, number three, Alabama, number four, Ohio State, number five, LSU, number six, USC, number seven, Penn State, number eight, Florida State, number nine, Clemson, and number 10, Tennessee. If you want the rest of the list, hey, feel free to go find the rest of the list. I don't need to go through the top 25 for it. Again, OU landed at number 19. Kind of, though, where I wanted to get into it with this video was further breaking it down. The SEC arrived at the top 25 with five teams. The Big Ten arrived with five teams as well. The Big 12 arrived at five. The Pac 12 had five. The ACC had three. Independent Notre Dame had one. And hey, look, a group of five had one with Tulane. Some of my initial thoughts that I had on this, reading this list. Again, these rankings are based mostly off of returning production and the expectation of the incoming talent, as well as who was on like the preseason, all conference first teams, etc. So really take all of this with a grain of salt. Remember, they don't award national championships to preseason number one. You got games you got to play, you got to get the results on the field. While it did equal out in the end, too, the SEC and the Big Ten got a lot of love in the top 10. The SEC is very, 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 very top heavy, while the Big Ten is a little bit more distributed throughout the poll. The rest of the poll has the ACC scattered throughout of it, and the Big 12 kind of rounds it out near the bottom of the top 25. Even with the conference realignment, there would still be no Big 12 team in the top 10, which I agree with because we expect everybody to have the Big 12 down. Just a couple extra notes from it. Teams that I'm sold on, that I have strong opinions about, include Georgia. They're defending back-to-back national champions. They may not have the full talent returning on the roster, but until otherwise said, they're the top dog. No arguments from me for putting them number one at this point. Alabama has earned the right to be ranked high at number three in the preseason due to Nick Saban and player development. And just even with the questions surrounding the quarterback position and the high turnover rate, there's no reason why to drop them past three until they start losing a couple games. Um, Ohio State was a couple seconds off from winning their national championship last year, because I think they actually could have beaten TCU as well. But I think they should also be ranked above Michigan, even with the loss of CJ Stroud to the draft. Maybe one more rank. They do have a tough schedule, but I do think they're better than Michigan in the end. LSU, they're probably the best team in the SEC West. They do have questions on the defense, but hey, we'll figure that out once we see what happens with Florida State in week 1. Finally, the other team I agree with, USC, they have a ton of production coming back. I would say for sure they are definitely a top 10 just for having Caleb Williams on at quarterback position on their own. But I just don't see them breaking into the playoff at this point. High octane offense, but that defense, again, in Riley tradition, just falls under anybody who has a pulse and just has defense on their mind. But for, again, preseason purposes, and considering you have your Heisman QB back with Williams, like I said, it's about right where they're at from it. Some highlights of teams that I am absolutely not sold on or I feel like are way too high. I'm not a believer in Michigan. Let's just put this out there right now. They're just, even though they're one of the very, very few teams besides USC who has like a returning quarterback and a very high returning production. Just not sure about the schedule as they do get Michigan State and Penn State away. They get Ohio State at home, but those are going to be tough places that they're going to have to travel to. Similar situation with Florida State. They got taken to the brink of like a loss by 6-17 or 6-17, and I'm just not a believer in them. Texas, I think everybody can agree is way too high. Without Bijan, Texas is like taking a massive step back. 12 is way too high. 2025, I could get behind that. 12, ha, no. Next up, TCU is way too high again, and they should be unranked. They got the benefit of the doubt from playing in the Natty, but all their COVID super senior players are gone, and I do think they're in for a rough season. I expect them by the end of the season to be unranked at this point. On the flip side, I think teams that aren't getting enough love, Kansas State, probably the best team in my opinion right now in the Big 12. People keep mistakenly picking Texas because on paper you should be picking Texas, except when you realize that Bijan is not going to be there. And common sense is like telling you otherwise, but then they switch back and go, Texas anyway, even though Kansas State is a much more solid team. It really should be Kansas State. Another one I think is a little bit should be in like the top 15, maybe 15 to 20. Texas Tech as well. They're to me, they're also the dark horse of the Big 12 at this point. Finally, just to wrap it all up, teams that kind of have whatever I have just no strong opinion about because they're not going to get far this season. Whether they win a conference championship and make it to a New Year's Six, or they're just not in playoff contention at this point. Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State are better than them. Clemson, I do think we're going to start seeing the cracks in the defense as they're going to start taking some steps backward without Venables on defense, as well as Florida State probably being a better team than they are. Tennessee, despite Heupel's success and everything they did last year, I think getting Hendon Hooker drafted is just going to hurt them in the long run for it. I do see them taking a slight step back, though. Washington, Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon State, North Carolina, they're probably losing their best player on the team because of, I think, some ineligibility issues. They're going to take a step back. Wisconsin, Ole Miss, Tulane, I think they're great, but they've lost too many great key players to the NFL draft. And then, of course, Texas A&M, despite them having talent, they can't develop players. 25, I just don't care at this point. Again, it also goes back to the rule of thumb, which is going to be used in the AP polls. Once you start hitting teams like at 12 to 15, they're all pretty similar at this point. It's just which of their detriments is more crucial for them and what league they're playing and where it can be exploited versus some of the other leagues at this point. Again, I mentioned it, no Big 12 in the top 10, but that shouldn't be surprising as despite me saying K-State is the favorite, the Big 12 is really up for grabs this year because of how many teams are going to be down this season. It's why even with some craptacular returning production, OU is in the running and still predicted 9 to 10 wins. End of the day, there are several teams I expect, like TCU, Oregon State, etc., to not be ranked by the end of the season. Specifically concerning OU, however, based on all the sunshine pumping that's coming from practice, as well as the similarities you're hearing, you heard it first. Undefeated season, national championship. Heisman winner. No, we're not. We're not. We're even despite we're overdue for it, and we want to prove the haters who are drinking the haterade wrong. No, that's not all it. In all seriousness, I think OU should not even be ranked for it due to the loss of some of the anchors and production on both sides of the ball. Not to mention how young the guys are versus the ones who have taken snaps, as well. And it's really still just having a mixture of both the Rileys and Venables players. I'm not saying that the players who are there from the Riley regime are dead weight or anything. Riley just was a horrible evaluator of talent beyond the quarterback position, and we do have some liabilities at some positions which are very, very questionable. An argument could be made to that OU is getting some benefit of the doubt due to it being Venables' year one mulligan, being a perennial blue blood slash we have a certain bar we and expectations we hit every year, and the consistency we've had well over 20 years, as well as the resources available and the young talent we have, including how OU essentially Nebraska themselves, and we were only a handful of plays from winning 9 to 10 games last season. It literally just came to down to a we just literally ran out of time. Well, that's the point of the game. They just exploited us with it. That said, again though, I don't think they should be ranked. But then again, I don't really have issues where OU is ranked. That's kind of what happens when you go 6-7 in the previous season. There's too many question marks on both the offense and the defense that I believe makes us still a year off before we're really able to really make that jump back from below average to at least great, as we are still kind of rebuilding. Again, I think we're about a year off. So no outrage here from me this year, anyways. From it, it's respectable, especially if the ceiling is Big 12 championship and 10-2, 9-3. You get the gist at this point. Like I said, in the above too. It's also why we're number 19 because in this games that we only lost by a handful of plays, we also could have adjusted and really didn't. At this point with number 19, there are some major flaws, and it'll become a toss up on who would win on the any given days type of deal. For OU, like I said, it's simple. Just go undefeated to Texas, and then that's where we're going to start seeing where OU is going to fall for the rest of the season. Finally, let's be honest, even if we do win it, it's a historically weak schedule for OU. OU will not get the benefit of the doubt if we lose, as we're already seeing it with how they rank the rest of the Big 12. The big takeaway from that is the no margin of error beyond the standard expectations for it. I think OU is going to get some inflated with it, like 9-10, they'll be ranked maybe top 15. But if they lose, they're gonna drop like an anchor. Um, Again, when the AP poll releases, we'll probably rinse and repeat and do probably the exact same talking points if there is any changes, major changes between both. However, in the end, preseason rankings, especially in the coaches poll, doesn't matter. It'll all work itself out in the end. You got to play the games on the field. The more important poll is the AP poll. I think really the only thing of value you can get from the coaches poll is like what they're really thinking, who voted for what, if we get those results type of deal from it. So yeah, that's all I got for this Wednesday night, guys. Be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload a video or we go live on live streams every Sunday and Wednesday. Spread the word about the channel. Like I said in earlier ones, I have some lofty goals on my vision board this year was to really push and grow the channel when football season arrived, which was August. Feel free to listen to any previous videos, including some old live streams. They're great background noise if you're doing chores or need your football fix. And also be sure to check some of the descriptions. I will be constantly updating from week to week relevant information and the upload schedule for the week with some flexibility in mind because, hey, we all have lives outside of work and we have all lives outside of streaming as well. I do have a full-time job, so I just cannot be at the keyboard 24/7. So usually I'll record and upload late in the evenings. So be sure to check in the morning for it because that also, as well, when I get home, I got to type some notes up to be able to refer to as well for it as I analyze a whole lot. And like I said before, comment in the comment section, guys. I like to interact with OU fans and football fans in general, both about football and non-football topics. I like talking movies. I like talking video games, anime, etc. But that's all I got, guys. Be on the lookout Thursday for my Reddit prediction video as we are really inching closer to the top 10 programs at this point. I think today they released like Texas was number 16. So I want to get this up before we have it released and kind of compare notes of what I was thinking versus where we actually landed at that point. Finally, those for you who are already thinking about attending the game at the beginning of September against Arkansas State, just start hydrating now. Even though we got some cool temperatures, hey, it's going to be a hot one at 11 a.m. That's all I got, guys. Boomer Sooner, only one Oklahoma. I'll see y'all on the next video.